This video is sponsored by Squarespace. So if you need a website, a domain, or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace and use the discount code Andrew Marr. We're coming to the end of our Kimberley trip, so Matt, Jared and I decided to grab our last opportunity and head down to the creeks near Roebuck Bay for our final sunset drone flight. We timed the trip around the biggest tide shifts so we could photograph the creeks and the bays during the lowest tide. During the night before, Broome had had their largest tide in decades at over 10 metres. You can see just how high the water reached only hours before we drove through. My aim this morning was to capture some of the detail in the runoffs along the creek and then fly the drone up the coast to capture some of those red earthy tones. Night, we did some final planning for our 4-hour plane flight that was to take place the next morning. The flight was to take off from Broome and head up north along the coast and then east to Derby. We discussed our flight plan with the pilot, giving him an idea of how long we wanted to spend at each of the bays, leaving us plenty of time to explore our main location, which was Pender Bay. I've got Maddie here and I've got Jared back. We're at my place and we went for, at the end of our Kimberley Broome trip, we went for a plane flight up to Pender and a whole bunch of areas around that. It's a couple of weeks later now, because when we actually did take the flight, we hopped in our cars and spent 3 days driving back to Perth, didn't we? And we didn't actually have a chance to catch up and reflect on the plane flight. We didn't have much time at all, so we thought we'd get together and have a bit of a chat about that and a bit of a reflection. We've all had a bit of a chance to have a look at our images, and so we're going to have a bit of a chat about that. And we thought we'd record it and share it with you guys. Whereabouts did we fly from?
We took off from Broome. we've gone up to follow the west coast of the Cape there. So we've gone up past Willie Creek, Beagle Bay, James Price Point, made our way up to Pender Bay, which was one of the main targets for shooting, and it was all about the colour changes and textures and making the most of the whole Cape there. Really.
Yeah, a heap of country that we covered.
We did a fair bit of distance.
And we took, it was 3.5 hours or three?
Just 3 and 3/4.
3 3/4. So just under 4 hours. Just under 4 hours. So it was a big flight.
It was a long flight. So it ended up being a Cessna 210.
So that had the
slightly different to the 210 that we organised, but yeah, 210 all the same. So that obviously got us covering the distance that we had to do a lot easier within that time frame, because obviously you've got pretty much the 4 hour window leaving reserves in the tank. So that leg that we did in anything but the 210, I think the 182 and the 172 would have struggled, and we would have had to fill up in Derby there,
which was an option for us, but
we
wanted to avoid that if we could.
Yeah, definitely.
So how much planning went into where we actually went to, and how long we spent at each point?
I'm trying to think when it was. December, I think.
Yeah, December we started sort of planning and picking out tides and back and forwards with this tide, that tide. Will it work? How long will it take to get there? Will we catch the tide?
Yep, we could do a whole video on tides in itself, but I think what we discussed while we were up there was, in the end, pick a tide that you think is reasonably good, and just get up there and shoot and have a look what it's like.
You get good shots either way, I suppose.
There's no magical tidal level or anything like that. It's just, you're going to get different conditions whenever you're up there.
Yeah.
And so you shoot what those conditions are.
I'd planned to get up there to get a lot of those sediments and the greys and the blues and those textures. So the reason we looked for the tide that we did, we knew that we'd get a lot more of that, giving ourselves more time the lower we went with the tide.
I suppose if you're just starting out and you're not too sure, then you get up there at a low tide, and you start shooting. You get to be a little bit familiar with the area, and you understand the tides a little bit more, and then you can really hone in on exactly what sort of shot that you want and the conditions that you need for it.
Definitely.
And you get a little bit more familiar.
Because someone might want more of that water,
a
lot less of the texture, more of the swirls, the interaction that you get between the sandbars and the water swirling through. So it is all about what you want to get.
And so how much did we have to work with the pilot just beforehand?
A good idea, obviously, to have a flight path. They can go out the window, but as long as you've got a baseline to work from, and get the pilot as close to the same page as what you are before you take off. That's always a really good idea, because then you're wasting less time in the air. And then you can sort of fine tune it more. You're not wasting time in general direction. You're using that time to pinpoint specific details.
Because there's a lot of things that you're doing. You're concentrating on the images that you're obviously taking, but then also trying to direct the pilot, not only in what direction you want them to go, but maybe what height you want them to go. So there's lots of things that you kind of
there's a lot of
thinking about. You were doing more of that up the front of the plane, but you were always communicating back to us about whether we were happy with the flight.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the configuration of the plane, where we were sitting. You were sitting at the back with me, weren't you, Maddie?
Back behind the pilot.
Yep. And I was sitting behind Jared. Jared was sitting to the right of the pilot. The pilot was on the left-hand side. How did you find that? Obviously there were some challenges there.
Yeah, worked alright. The window was a bit small, but it sort of worked with the pilot, and he nudged forward and gave a bit more room. And
as did Jared, and I think I've got some footage of him curled up there on his seat, and then I was pushing forward on the back of his seat and getting at the back there. So
the amount of wind coming through those windows was
actually that was the other thing with the windows, was the actual doors of the windows were meant to stay up flat against the wing which comes out over above us. So that was one of the advantages of that particular plane, is you haven't got the wing in the shot.
Yeah.
it's above us, but unfortunately that didn't quite happen. So there were different techniques that we were using with our elbows and stuff, trying to hold the
wedge it open while taking shots. It was a completely different plane and set up to what we'd organised. We were told that we'd have a window each that would open. We've got there, and none of the windows bar the pilot's window could open. So that almost threw the flight out the window there because that wasn't workable.
Because the plane there was meant to be 3 seats effectively, the pilot and the seat next to him, and then another bench where 2 people could sit, and then another bench behind us. And so the idea that was described to us is that we would each be sitting effectively on our own bench on the same side of the plane, which was going to make it easier because the plane then only has to do one pass pretty much over an area, and we've all got the same access to it. Once you've got people on either side of the plane, then you have to accommodate for passing over areas more than once, so that all the photographers, everyone gets a fair go.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, when we got there, there was only two.
Two rows.
There was only 2 windows, wasn't there?
There was only 2 windows.
And one of them, and only one of them opened.
Yeah, the pilots, yeah.
And so effectively, the row with the pilot and then the row behind had to share the same window on either side.
Yeah.
But with a little bit of cramping up and stuff, it worked.
Yeah, so we're lucky that pilot. If we didn't have the pilot that we did,
yep,
that flight would have been off. The pilot that we had has.
Oh, that's right, because the original plane, only one side actually opened and the other side
didn't.
Yeah,
it was just the pilot's window.
So we actually changed planes at the last minute.
Yeah.
Next, we're going to talk about some of the gear and camera settings we used. But first, I just want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Squarespace is an all-in-one website building platform that makes creating and hosting a website simple and straightforward. I started my website so that I had a place where I could share my images. Setting up portfolios and galleries is very quick in Squarespace with their beautifully designed gallery layouts and the ability to just drag and drop your images where you want them. No coding required, and my images look fantastic on mobile, tablet and desktop. Once I had my portfolio online, I started playing around with some of the blogging tools available on the platform. Squarespace makes it easy to share images or videos, categorize posts, as well as schedule when they're available. You can check them out at squarespace.com, where you can start your free trial today. Once you're set up and you're ready to launch your website, make sure you go to squarespace.com/Andrew Marr to get 10% off your first purchase.
Cameras. You were using the same cameras that you took up on the Roebuck.
Yep, same
flight?
camera, same lens.
Yep. Was there anything that you changed at all?
Just the shutter speed. I was shooting a little bit quicker. I noticed we're a bit lower down and the plane was going a bit faster than the helicopter, so I just upped the shutter speed a bit just to
I did
make
that
sure.
as well. Plus, I found that the light was a little bit harsher on the Pender flight because we didn't have the cloud, so I was finding that I was getting a little bit more light as well. I took 2 cameras on the plane. I didn't take the 2 cameras on the chopper because we had the doors off on the chopper and I didn't feel like flipping between 2 cameras. But I did have 2 cameras on the plane flight, which meant that I could have 2 lenses. That was basically the advantage, and I thought I was going to take more shots on the Nikon Z7 with the wider lens. I had the D800 with the longer lens, the 70 to 200 as opposed to the 14 to 30, and it ended up being that I was taking a lot more shots on the longer lens. Because I found that we were, a combination of we tended to be higher up a little bit, even though we were moving a lot quicker. I also took your advice because on the chopper I didn't have mine on continuous shooting mode, but I decided to flick both of mine onto continuous shooting mode, which I found actually a little bit better.
For Pender?
Yeah, for Pender. Because it just meant that I was able to compose something up and then hold the shutter button down and then just blam off half a dozen shots and get the shot that I wanted or get the composition that
Pick
I
the
wanted.
one you want out of it.
Yeah. As a result though, I took probably about 1,000 shots on the Roebuck Bay shot, and nearly just under 5,000 shots
Yeah.
for the Pender.
But that's the best way to do things. There's nothing wrong. It's actually a good thing to overshoot when you're up there, because you know you're outlaying that kind of money.
Yeah. What were some of the differences between the two flights, other than the fact that we went to two different locations? One, we took a chopper, and it was a shorter amount of time. The other time we took a plane for a longer amount of time. But what were the main differences, and what would you prefer to take?
Probably the helicopter's a bit more easier to like shoot out of, and
Yeah.
you can have the option of it going sideways across the scene instead of
Yes.
trying to loop around it again. But
Easy to shoot out of because you got the doors off.
Yes, that is that.
So
as well.
so that was a great advantage, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I like the chopper because you can do it with the plane, but it just seemed to be easier in the chopper to be able to circle around and do another pass.
Yeah.
Whereas with the plane, it's just bigger, you're moving
Yeah.
faster. We still did a few passes, but it wasn't as agile, was it, as the...
It's not as agile, and then unless you got a really good pilot as well, even when you come back around, because it's such a wider turning circle, to get that plane back around, you're not going to get back on top of it exactly as, you know, it's easy enough saying, oh, we'll go back around and we'll go over it again, but then once you get back over it, you're sort of not exactly over it in the right
No.
place.
Yep.
Like you're saying
Yeah.
Matt, the chopper can just spin around, pull it up, and you're exactly where you want to be. There's that accuracy that you can get with the helicopters, just the
really
Cessnas don't have anything on it.
But the Cessna was good to cover that large amount of ground and just to see it, and then
Yeah.
the next time you can say, oh,
That's where
we'll
the
shell
Cessnas...
out and get a chopper and go just to that one location.
We got some good
Before
shots
you-
out of it.
Oh, got some rippers, I think. We were, pretty lucky with the light that we got on both flights.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
happy with the
lovely.
shots
Yes,
that you
super
got?
happy, yeah.
What sort of shots have you seen in your set so far? Even given that you've only had a couple of days or a week or so to have a look, what sort of shots are you looking forward to editing in the Pender flight?
It's a tough one. When Jared was saying Pender, that's the place we're going, that's where we're going to get the shots,
Mhm.
I was keen on that. But even just on the way there, like the few of the little inlets on the way just
Oh,
blew
really?
your mind. Like
They did,
some
didn't
of,
they?
some of the shots just from those, even before we got to Pender Bay, are just
Yep.
epic. So it was,
And we found things that we weren't even expecting. There was that little clump of sand dunes
yeah.
that we came about. Was
Yeah.
that just north of Willie Creek, or was
No,
it was
that's
even further
somewhere
north?
around Beagle Bay, I think.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's
It was
Beagle Bay,
actually
yeah.
further north. If you want to check out Matty Field's Instagram, I'll put his link in the description below, and I'll do the same with Jared's as well, so you can check out their images. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your mates. If you're enjoying this sort of content around landscape photography, then check out my other videos and consider subscribing. But until the next video, thanks very much for watching.